Hi, welcome. Today I am reading a book called Doing Life with Your Adult Children. I've created two other go live videos or live video streams on YouTube, and in those I had some technical things. So if you are joining me after reviewing those, thank you so much for sticking with me. I've decided not to be live and just read. And right now I'm going to start with the introduction and invitation to keep the welcome mat out. Forgive the redundancy if you've seen the previous video on this, but it truly is the best place to start, given that the go live sort of quit on me right in the middle of these 3 to 5 pages. So here we go. I'm Jaimie Thor. I'm founder of Thor Wellness Group. A friend of mine recommended this book, Doing Life with Your Adult Children. Keep your mouth shut and the welcome mat out. The author is Jim Burns, and he is a Christian author. And very quickly, I'm just going to read the titles of some of the other books that he's written. Number 1, Confident Parenting. Number 2, Creating an Intimate Marriage. Number 3, 10 Building Blocks for a Solid Family. Number 4, Closer, and he co-wrote with Kathy Burns. Number 5, Understanding Your Teen. Number 6, Pass It On. Number 7, The Purity Code. Number 8, Teaching Your Children Healthy Sexuality. Number 9, God Made Your Body, and this is a children's book, which, by the way, I think it's awesome to be able to author and have audiences from the young to the very old and the wise. Next is How God Makes Babies, and that's also a children's book. Getting Ready for Marriage with Doug Fields. First Few Years of Marriage, also with Doug Fields, and Faith Conversations for Families. The way this book is designed is it has questions at the end of each chapter, I believe, so that you can facilitate a conversation with somebody you're reading it with, be it a spouse, or if you just want to introspectively reflect, or if you're leading a small group. So here we go. Thanks for joining me, by the way. Introduction, an invitation to keep the welcome mat out. Something wakes me up. I look at the clock. It's 2:30 a.m. Then I discover who disturbed my sleep. It's my wife, Kathy. She's just lying there next to me, and her eyes are wide open. What's up? I ask. Are you okay? Yes, I'm okay, she says. I was just thinking about Becca. Is she okay? I asked. I guess so, Kathy replies. I just don't know. I give her hand a reassuring pat. Is there anything I can do for you? No, she says. Just go back to sleep. Most parents I've talked with have told me they've lost sleep worrying about their kids when their kids were younger, but I've been surprised to discover how many parents of adult children tell me the same thing. I often hear statements like these. My son's choices are breaking my heart. I feel like I don't know what my role is as her parent anymore. He needs to get a job. Every time I give my daughter some heartfelt advice, she bites my head off. I'm still in shock that he doesn't go to church anymore. Where did I go wrong? Can you relate to any of these questions? If so, know that you are far from alone and that the pages that follow were written with you in mind. Although this book cannot magically take away any problem you have with your adult child, I hope it will give you the perspective, insight, and practical guidance you need to move your relationship in a positive direction. We'll tackle some of the toughest and most common issues faced by parents who are struggling with their adult children, and we'll explore 9 principles that can help you through these thorny issues in productive ways. It's important to me that you know these 9 principles aren't just abstract theory. They were developed and applied primarily in a lab of doing life with my own adult children. Although my career has given me a platform to write and speak on topics such as parenting, marriage, and relationship, this is a much more personal book. I wanted to figure out how to be the best possible dad to my adult children, who are my deepest joy and greatest challenge. It hasn't always been easy. The issues covered in this book come from our own challenges as parents, as well as the challenges of thousands of other parents who have shared their stories with me. As I listened to story after story, I began to see patterns and commonalities. When I went looking for resources, I was surprised to discover that compared with the literature available for early years of parenting, there is relatively little available about the challenges of parenting an adult. Yet, we will spend more time as a parent of an adult than we will as the parent of a young child or adolescent. As I wrote the book, I kept an old Starbucks cup on my desk, and it was a reminder that I wanted these pages to read more like a conversation between 2 friends talking about their kids than as an expert doling out a monologue of advice. Friends tell stories and share dreams. Friends give ideas to each other and confess worries. Friends give each other hope and encouragement. I've often said people learn best when they talk, not when I talk. If I were sitting together over coffee, we could have a great conversation. But since we aren't able to sit together, I've created questions for reflection, and at the end of each chapter, you may read them. Use them on your own or discuss with a spouse or perhaps a small group. My goal is to give you hope, encouragement on your journey. Like Kathy and me, you may have nights when you lie awake and wonder, what in the world is going on with my kid? Today, now that our kids have gotten older, we are experiencing the incredible joy of grandparenting and have made the transition from an adult-child relationship with our kids to our dream of an adult relationship. Has it been easy for us? Not really. Have these principles helped us? Yes, immeasurably. My prayer is that these pages will reassure you life with your adult child can be the best years of your relationship. Keep the welcome mat out. This is hard for me. My husband died in 2018, and I feel like my then 22-year-old was already, well into adulting, but just, my husband's decision and sorrow and actions really damaged my relationship with all 3 of my kids. My daughter has never slept in her bedroom or in my home since then. And my youngest son, I thought we were doing pretty good, but his sophomore year in college, he left. It was pretty tough his senior year, his freshman year, but his sophomore year, he left. And we both were frustrated and angry, but I couldn't get to the bottom of his frustration and resentment. So to this day, it's been almost 7 years, and no holiday has been the same. In fact, everyone has been worse. It was bad before. My husband didn't grow up in a healthy home. And that's all I'm going to say right now. Thank you. Chapter 1, you're fired. Principle 1, your role as the parent must change. Be nice to your adult children. They will most likely be the ones someday who will take away your car keys and usher you into a convalescent care facility. I don't know about you, but as our 3 daughters became adults, we didn't see all the changes coming when our kids were in their early 20s. They told us in one way or another they were now grown up, even though from our perspective they weren't always acting as such. They wanted to be treated as adults, but were still mostly dependent on our income, making lifestyle changes somewhat that collided with our values. And I thought life was supposed to be easier and less complicated when our kids became adults, is what my wife said. Over the past decade, many people have told me being the parent of an adult child was not what they expected. One woman quoted a line from the movie Hitch, in which the character says, after a disastrous dating experience, I saw that going differently in my mind. What parent of an adult child hasn't said something like that? Some kids who now live in adult bodies still act a bit like children, or at least their parents think so. Here's the good news. Most adult children eventually do become responsible and independent. They may zigzag through their younger adult years, taking a few steps forward and a few back. And there might be a U-turn or some false starts here and there. Eventually it happens. The challenge is that becoming an adult seems to be taking longer for this generation than it has for any previous generation. And that slower transition isn't easy for a parent or an adult child. Although you and your child are traveling different paths, you're on a parallel journey of reinventing your relationship. It's better when you navigate it together, but neither of you have passed this way before. And even if you have made the transition with one child, the next likely will approach the transition to adulthood differently. You might find yourself with some degree of day-to-day parenting duties that stretch past the 18-year mark, or even the 25 to 35 mark, especially if your adult children move back home for some reason. No doubt you will experience bewilderment with your grown kids violate your values or live differently from how they were raised. Your goal must remain the same: to help your children transition to responsible adulthood. To do that, you need to first understand your old job description as a parent and then create a new one. Your old job description. When our kids were young, my wife Kathy and I felt fairly uncomfortable in our parenting roles. It wasn't always easy and there were some bumps on the road, but for the first 2 decades, we were clear about our jobs. We were in control, and it was our clear-cut responsibility to be our parents, providers, caretakers, and nurturers. Even if our kids disagreed, they knew ultimately we were the bosses. Then adulthood abruptly showed up, and we weren't ready for it. For us, it happened on the day each kid went away to college. Now they were settling in. Now they were setting their own hours, making travel decisions we didn't agree with, spending money on things and experiences we wouldn't have approved for just a few months ago. To them, church attendance was now an option rather than a commitment. Kathy and I realized we were losing part of our parenting job description that we liked, which was the control. In a very short amount of time, we moved from having daily input in our kids' lives and doing hands-on parenting to more of the intermittent and distant kind of parenting. Most transitions aren't easy, and we found the transition from our old job description to be especially challenging. It's important to acknowledge your old job description as a parent, so you may set it aside. That's the only way to make room for your new one. It's also important to know that this transition of moving from daily involvement and hands-on parenting to a more intermittent involvement will likely be easier for your kids than for you. Expect transition period within your transition. Expect to have transition period within your transition. In our case, we thought of it as a unique and somewhat awkward dance in which neither we nor kids knew the right moves. There was plenty of stepping on toes and renegotiating boundaries until we found a rhythm with each other. And just when we thought we were dancing well with one child, the next went to college and we had to do the awkward dance all over again. Your new job description. Since all children are different, there is no template for a new job description for parenting adults. You may have to redefine your role differently for each of your kids. Before you can create that new job description, or better yet, a new kind of relationship with your adult children, there's an important thing you need to do. You must love them enough to let them go. Rewriting the script, establishing new adult-to-adult relationship with your kid requires firing yourself from your old job of day-to-day nurturing and being in control of your kids and embracing a new role that is not as daily or hands-on as before. Hard as it is, the role you play in your children's lives must diminish in order for them to transition from adolescence into responsible adulthood. I agree with that. Yet, my scenario is much different than theirs. I shall read on. If you are in or have already been through this transitional stage, you know it's complicated, messy, sometimes feels like you're walking on eggshells. One dad I know described it this way. My son and I had been very close, even in the teen years, he said. As he approached adulthood, I kept doing what I'd always been doing, but my son reacted in strange ways. Most of the time, he didn't even want my advice. I'm a pastor, and frankly, I give good advice. Regardless, he moved away from my control, but still wanted my influence on his terms. It took a few years and some bumps and ego bruises along the way to figure out that this new adult-to-adult relationship would look different. He went on to say, sometimes we still experience bumps in our relationship, especially when he is making decisions I'm not happy about. But I've had to realize that his vision for his life is different from my vision for his life. One of the most difficult things I had to do was relinquish my adult child to God and release control over him. My friend eloquently described the idea of reinventing the relationship to help his son become responsible as an adult. Although there are no formulas or job description templates for making the transition to an adult relationship with your child, Kathy and I discovered some meaningful strategies to help along the way. We called these our guiding principles and need to refer to them often, especially at the beginning of the transition. The quicker you can embrace your new role and, yes, even grieve the loss of your old one, the better it is for everyone. Here's the 4 stages to help you embrace your new job description. Before I read the next 4 strategies or stages, let me pause and take a moment because there's a prayer for it's entitled A Prayer of Relinquishment. So, are you ready? A prayer of relinquishment. God, I relinquish my children to your care and watchfulness. Give me the courage to let go as they move, sometimes ever so slowly, toward responsible adulthood. Grant me discernment to know when to carefully intervene and the restraint to do so only when absolutely necessary. I acknowledge that this is one of the hardest transitions I've ever had to make, and that I need your guidance and insight in all things. Help me to love my children as you love them, lavishly and with grace. Amen. In Jesus' name. Well, that's good prayer. Here we go. Here are the 4 stages to help you embrace your new job description. Number 1, be encouraging but not intrusive. You are a consultant at their will. Your job is caring and supportive. Your job is to be caring and supportive of your child, to mentor only when called upon, and to be your child's biggest cheerleader. Don't be like the mother who told her daughter, "Honey, put on your coat, it's cold outside." Her daughter, who was vice president of a successful tech firm, shot back, "Mom, I'm 45 years old and I can decide for myself when I put a coat on." Her mother simply added, "I'm still your mother." And you need to listen to me. As well-meaning as the mom may have been, her daughter considered it intrusive. Being intrusive means inserting yourself into your child's life in ways that are uninvited or unwelcome. Not being intrusive means promoting your child to full adult status and developing a new adult-to-adult relationship, while at the same time being encouraging and supportive. One of the ways Kathy and I learned to be encouraging was to hold our tongues and not say everything we thought. Instead of giving voice to whatever we disagree with, we focus on cheering whatever we could affirm. My friend Rob summarizes his approach to be encouraging rather than intrusive in this way. Earn the right to be heard. Rob was concerned about his daughter Angela's lifestyles and her choices. As one encounter, he pulled out a dad list, quote unquote, of concerns and went through them one by one. Needless to say, it did not go over very well with the daughter. The result were tears, anger, and I am going to insert likely resentment. The more he expressed his disapproval, the farther away Angela moved from what had been a close relationship. So Rob changed his approach. One day he called her up and said, "How would you like to go snowboarding together for a couple days?" Angela loved to snowboard, and Rob thought she would jump at this chance, but she hesitated before accepting the invitation, and it was clear she didn't want a repeat of their conversation. The day before Rob arrived to pick up his daughter, he was tempted to write another list of concerns he wanted to discuss. He decided instead to put all the energy into simply enjoying and encouraging his daughter, even though he still had concerns and also had strong reasons. Even though he still had concerns, he also had strong reason to affirm her, his daughter. Rob and Angela had a wonderful weekend together and laughing and sharing, eating good food. Even so, Rob drove home after dropping her off. He wondered whether he did the right thing by not talking with her about his concerns. Rob didn't have to wonder for long. Just as he pulled into the driveway, he got a text from Angela. "Dad, that was one of the best times I ever had with you. Thank you so much for snowboarding and for the great meals. I love you so much. Also, I know you probably had your dad list with you, and I wanted to give you a quick update." Angela went on to tell her dad she was making some changes in many of the areas in which he had concern. Today she's happily married and still very close to her dad, who's become a mentor to her. He chose to be encouraging and not intrusive, and the results were twofold. Number one, he earned the right to be heard, and number two, he developed a more positive, trusting relationship with his daughter. Being encouraging rather than intrusive is one of the disciplines in which you might find yourself taking 4 steps forward and then a step or 2 back. In our hearts, we know encouragement is much more effective than intrusion, but it's not always easy to do. So, go easy on yourself if you fall back into old habits, but practice the discipline of encouragement. You'll get much more positive response with affirmation than with meddling. Number 2. Be caring, but do not enable dependency. There's a difference between caring and enabling dependency. Clearly, your new role involves loving care, but it cannot be a form of care that keeps your child dependent on you. Some parents keep tight reins on their children because they are unknowingly struggling with their need to be needed. Their motives may be admirable, but caring that enables dependency is not healthy. Take John and Sylvia, for example. They took money out of their retirement savings to loan their son and his new wife the money to buy a very nice home. That may seem like a loving thing to do, but John and Sylvia didn't have the money to spare, and now they are suffering through some rough financial situations while their son and daughter-in-law enjoy a home that neither of their kids can afford. That neither they nor their kids can afford. So they're totally overextended. They're helping to make monthly payments and keep the kids from losing the house. John and Sylvia viewed their loan as a caring act for their son and daughter-in-law, but the truth is that they were enabling their dependency. If they had to do it over again, they would not have used their retirement savings to buy their kids a dream house that they couldn't afford on their own. This is a classic example of generous acts that backfire. It's what happens when we confuse caring with enabling dependency. Boy, that is the story of my husband and his mother. Ugh. Yeah, that overextension and then the dependency. Anyway, next. And I mean, let me just say, in my marriage, I take responsibility for my part in my marriage, but I really wasn't consulted with or a part of their relationship, so to speak. That was just hard. My mother-in-law was around a lot, and I appreciated her, but she didn't appreciate me, and nor did my husband appreciate her, but he wanted her there, and he treated her like she needed to clean and or help us, like she needed to, and we would have arguments about it. Sorry for digressing, but I guess I'm working through a little bit of something there because of the conversations, and I was trying to get him to see that the kids would see how he was treating his mom, and that is not a good example, and it just didn't work. Okay, sorry. I'm digressing into my own thoughts here. Let's get back to the paragraph. So, such a classic example of a generous act that totally backfired. It's what happens when we confuse caring with enabling dependency. Whew. So, what else may John and Sylvia have done? Well, they could have allowed their kids to learn delayed gratification by saying no to a down payment, or agree to help them with the down payment on a more modest home the kids could afford with their income. The best decision is always one that does not enable dependence. Your job as a parent is to prepare your kids for adult life and then let them go. You are still their parent and will never change. That will never change. But the relationship must transition from dependency into a place of greater empowerment, maturity for your child. Independence is the goal. This means your adult children take full responsibility for their finances, actions, relationships, and growth and development. Number 3, invest in your emotional, physical, and spiritual health. Brenda and her husband, Ted, sat in my office brokenhearted. Their daughter, Lindsay, just moved in with her boyfriend. She had confessed to something they had long suspected, which was her use of illicit drugs. Where did we go wrong? Brenda asked. It seems like everyone else's adult kids are making better decisions than ours are. Maybe we should have made Lindsay go to one more mission trip, said Ted. Every year at Christmas, when we saw the picture-perfect families and cards on social media, Brenda lamented, we had the same thought, what's wrong with our parenting skills? Although they couldn't name it, Brenda and Ted were experiencing shame. As our conversations continued, we considered how to deal with Lindsay's problem. But I asked them about a problem I wasn't sure they knew that they had. Lindsay's actions must be devastating to you, I said. Sounds like you are really depleted, I said. Ted nodded. Brenda's eyes were filled with tears. What are you doing to maintain your emotional, physical, relational, and spiritual health? At this time, Ted's eyes welled up with tears, and Brenda began to sob. Ted put his arm around his wife and said simply, "We aren't doing anything for us, and it's killing us." My heart went out to both of them because I knew the pain of a troubled child was depleting them in so many ways. My counsel wasn't anything new, but it seemed to help them. I'm sure you've heard what the flight attendant says when you get on the airplane, right? There's a need for oxygen. Put on your own oxygen mask first and then help your child. The looks on their faces told me they understood. You won't be any benefit to your child if you are gasping for air. Working on your emotional, physical, and spiritual health not only helps you to be stronger for your child, but also helps you to gain a clearer perspective on any shame or regret you may be feeling. When kids make poor or disappointing decisions, many parents experience the silent shame that Brenda described. A friend of mine once said to me, "When your children are young, they climb all over you, step on your feet. When they're older and make poor choices, they step on your heart." Of course, not all adult children break their parents' hearts, but the transition is still difficult for most and usually involves a great deal of loss. Author Judith Vorst is right when she says, letting our children go and letting our dreams for our children go must be counted among our necessary losses. Whenever we experience a loss, we need to grieve it. If we don't grieve the relationship we once had with our children, we won't be able to embrace a new one that we want to have with them. When our children no longer need us the way they once did, it's a loss. I'm reminded of this every time I watch my grandson, James. I love how his mommy and daddy are the center of his universe. He needs them for everything, but it's also bittersweet when I realize I was once the center of my child's universe and now I'm not. For my children to be healthy and independent, I had to release them and grieve the loss. Being willing to put yourself in the back seat of your children's lives and to grieve the loss of the front seat is what gives the chance. I think I'm going to read that again. Is what gives you the chance to change the relationship and make it wonderfully different. That won't happen if you aren't emotionally, physically, and spiritually healthy yourself. This is why you must invest in self-care as your role with your adult kid. This is the sentence. It's awkwardly wrote. Sorry, but the editor did it. That's why you must invest in self-care as your role with your adult kid changes. A friend of mine puts it this way: untended fires soon become nothing but a pile of ashes. If you put all your energy into caring for your adult kids, you'll only end up depleted. Self-care is not selfish, writes my mentor, Gary Smalley. It's perhaps the best thing you can do for yourself and your family. Self-care means being proactive and caring for your mind, your body, and your soul. That might include spending time with people you enjoy, engaging in activities that replenish you, being physically active, even trying something new and exciting. If you have an adult child struggling, you will also want to surround yourself with a team of people that can be your support. Take that from Moses. Remember the story in the Bible when the Israelites were battling the Amalekites? When Moses held up his hands, the Israelites advanced against the Amalekites. But when he grows weary and could no longer hold up his hands, the Amalekites advanced against the Israelites. So Aaron and Hur found a stone for Moses to sit on, and each man held up one of Moses' hands. And with their help, Moses' hands remained steady throughout the long battle, and the Israelites won a great victory against the Amalekites. As you navigate the losses and the challenges of transitioning your relationship with your children to adult children to adults, make sure you have a team around you to share your burdens. Number 4, have serious fun. Transitioning to a new role isn't all loss and tears. There is also serious fun to be had. You can't determine the outcome of your children's lives, so shift your focus to creating fun and enjoyable experiences that you can share together. A cheerful heart is good medicine, wrote the wise King Solomon, but a broken spirit saps a person's strengths, which is Proverbs 17:22. Your attitude towards your adult kids will go a long way towards determining your relationship with them. Families that laugh and develop happy tradition draw closer to each other over time. One of the principles Kathy and I have relied on is this: words don't always lead to connection, but enjoyable connections lead to words. What are the activities and experiences your adult children enjoy? Chances are good that engaging in those activities with them will enhance your relationship. For many adult children, the fun factor is what determines their desire to relate to their parents on a deeper level. When I was in grad school, I studied traits of healthy families and later wrote a book on the subject. One of the top 10 traits is play. Come to find, families who play together really do stay together. Play, fun, laughter, and the creation of lifelong memories are essential for keeping your relationship with your adult kids strong. Play is a love currency. It makes deposits into your children's lives no matter what their age is. Having fun together can also open a closed heart, as it did with Rob's daughter Angela. It reduces stress and even helps heal broken relationship. How is the fun factor in your family? One of the greatest benefits moving from parent to child to adult relationship is that you begin a deeper friendship with your adult children. One of the strongest elements of friendship is having fun together. If you want to transition well, make initiating fun part of your new job description, and keep in mind that fun doesn't have to be expensive. It might be sharing an enjoyable meal, could be playing golf, window shopping, anything your family enjoys doing. Popcorn. That's my addendum. What are the fun experiences that will draw your relationship closer? Embracing these 4 strategies for adopting a new job description can turn a tough transition into meaningful transition. Too often we focus on how to manage our kids' transition to being adults, when the best way to facilitate their transition might be to change our job description. No one said it would be easy or that there wouldn't be bumps along the way. But changing your job description is a great way to start. The result is your legacy continues to the next generation. Leaving an impactful legacy. During the time of tension and deep disappointment, it can be difficult to think about creating a positive legacy for your children, but don't give in to despair or minimize the power to create a positive climate of influence and leave a legacy in your children's lives. Your attitude, lifestyle, value, faith, and example impact your kids in ways that you may never fully know. Author and pastor Chuck Swindoll summarizes building a legacy so well when he says, each day of our lives we make deposits in a memory bank of our children. I know that was certainly the case in my home with my parents. My father had his flaws, but he was a good man and I looked up to him. At the end of his life, he was quite feeble. He fell and broke his hip while using his walker. The doctor told us he thought he could fix the hip, but he was concerned if Dad didn't get up and move around after the surgery, he would die of pneumonia. 2 weeks later, after a successful hip surgery, he indeed was placed in hospice care because he had not gotten up and moved around. He eventually died exactly as the doctor forewarned us from pneumonia. I was alone with my dad in his room at the convalescent hospital a few days before his death when an energetic physical therapist came into the room and asked my dad to get up because it was time for physical therapy. I thought that a bit strange, given the condition of my dad, but decided to watch what would happen. Dad gave it a valiant try, but he almost fell out of bed in the process. I jumped up and caught him, and the physical therapist seemed surprised at his frailty and then noticed that she had the wrong chart. Bob, how did you break your hip? The therapist asked. It was a motorcycle accident, Dad said, without missing a beat. I smiled. The therapist looked at me with a puzzled expression. Actually, I said, he fell from his walker, but he did have a motorcycle accident about 4 years ago. She smiled, looked back and forth between Dad and me, and then said, Bob, this guy looks like he's your son. Do you have any children? Yes, Dad said. His mom and I have 4 boys. He listed our names and then added, I am proud of all my boys. It brought tears to my eyes to hear Dad say that about us. I'm looking forward to being with God soon in heaven, Dad added. The therapist didn't quite know how to respond to that, but she smiled again. I've lived a good life and I really have no regrets, Dad said. God is waiting for me in eternity. At this point, tears again welled up in my eyes. And when I looked at the physical therapist, I saw she also had tears in her eyes. And she lovingly put her hand on my father's shoulder and said, Goodbye, Bob. You're a good, good man, and thank you. Later, I reflected on what my dad had said. I was reminded of the studies psychiatrist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross had done on death and dying. As a researcher, Kubler-Ross spent many years interviewing people who were near death. One of her findings was that at the end of life, most people think primarily about 2 things: a right relationship with God and right relationship with those that they love. This was certainly the case with my dad. In his final days on earth, he was at peace, and he taught me a valuable lesson. There is absolutely nothing more important than life. There is absolutely nothing more important in life than a right relationship with God and a right relationship with family. Ultimately, that is what defines the legacy you leave your children. As difficult as it is to raise children and then maintain the bond through the complexity of relating to them as adults, what matters most isn't the material legacy you leave behind, but the legacy of love and faith that you hand down to the next generation. When our kids are younger, most of us are so busy with the demands of day-to-day parenting that it's hard to focus on leaving a legacy. But as your role and the job description change, you can focus on what is most important, which is leaving your child a legacy of love. Chapter 2. Shall we go 2 chapters? I think we can. Buckle up. Keep your mouth shut and the welcome mat out. Principle 2. Unsolicited advice is usually taken as criticism. But why does she need to go to Europe to find herself when I have all the answers for her life right here? I know there is a time to speak up and a time to keep my mouth shut, said a friend of mine. I just haven't figured out what to do when. Maybe you can relate. Knowing what to do and say and what not to do and say is one of the major challenges most of us face transitioning to an adult relationship with our son or daughter. Although there are exceptions, I've learned that in most cases, the best policy for parents is to bite their tongues and remain silent. Withholding advice goes against our nature as parents, but unsolicited advice is usually taken to be criticism. Many parents of adult children tell me the most difficult part of their new job descriptions is abstaining from giving advice when they know they're correct. For more than 2 decades, our reflex was to offer our guidance. It's hardwired into every parent's DNA. We have advice to offer for everything from potty training to first dates and more. So it is sometimes a shock when we discover our kids not only view our advice as criticism, but also are not asking for it. Here are 4 important guidelines to help you keep your relationship strong and avoid the trap of giving unsolicited advice. Number 1, trust that experience is a better teacher than advice. However much a parent was giving advice as an act of love, most adult children resent it. They strive for independence and view parents giving advice as telling them what to do or restricting their freedom. If you choose to give them advice rather than encourage their independence, they will run from you. When it comes to giving advice, author Jane Thor wrote, "Don't give it. They don't like it. They don't want it. They resent it." Instead of steering your children in the way they think they should go, trust that experience is a much better teacher. When you give them the independence and the respect they desire, they'll learn from the experience of victory and from defeat. We keep our mouth shut and keep the welcome mat out. Then we increase the odds that our children will come to us for guidance on their own. If we choose to continue giving them unwanted advice, even if it's great advice, with the best intentions, our intrusive counsel will ultimately hurt their relationship. Some call that the high cost of good advice. One of my wife, Kathy's love language is giving advice. Whenever she runs across an article she thinks may benefit someone in the family, she cuts it out of the magazine or forwards it to a web link. She is our go-to authority on everything from healthy lifestyle issues to spiritual growth and numerous other aspects of life. And she not only gives good advice, but also lives out what she advises the rest of us to do. One day when our kids were younger, we were on vacation in a small town of England when we came upon a sign in the doorway that read Citizen Advice Council. The kids shouted, "Mom, this is the perfect job for you." Her husband, which would be me, was smart enough to keep his mouth shut. Kathy just laughed and said, "You're probably right." For a person like Kathy, to whom advice giving comes naturally, it's especially difficult to bite her tongue and keep good advice to herself. But she has learned the wisdom of not saying everything that she thinks. When she does that, it's amazing how many times our children end up seeking her counsel. Here's the scriptural principle. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. This is James chapter 1, verse 19. It's especially important for those of us who are fix-it people, and if I'm a fix-it person and my son or my kids have a problem, I consider it my job to intervene. That's what I do, and that's who I am. Mr. Fix-It. But unless our kids ask for our help, we must resist the impulse to fix their problems. When you're tempted to give unsolicited advice, pause and ask yourself the question, does it really matter? Most issues don't really matter as much as we think they do. I love this bit of wisdom from Winston Churchill. You will never reach your destination if you stop and throw stones at every dog that barks. Keep your eyes on the destination, which is a healthy and loving relationship with your adult kids. Do not get distracted by the things that do not really matter. Adult children don't distinguish between what we consider innocent remarks or our desire to fix a problem and parental control. So, if we want to keep the welcome mat out, we have to keep our mouths shut. Number 2, give respect. No adult wants to be told what to do. My daughter, Christy, is capable, a young adult, an incredible mother of 2, and happily married. Not long ago, she was telling me about a challenge she was facing, and I said, Christy, do you mind if I give you some advice on that situation? And her answer surprised me. Not right now, Dad. Maybe later. Are you kidding me? I thought, people actually pay me to give advice. Furthermore, I have some really good counsel that you need. But it was clear that my advice was not what she wanted at the moment. I needed to respect that in the same way I would respect another adult who chose not to hear something I had to share. Now that your child is an adult, decisions need to be in his or her hands, not yours. This is true whether or not your grown-up is acting grown-up. One of the greatest gifts you can give your children is to respect them as adults. If you don't give them respect, it's pretty much guaranteed they will close the door on your guidance. Don't be like a mom who had the following exchange with her grown son, who moved back in after his divorce. You need to come home by 9 p.m. or I won't be able to cook you a warm dinner. Mom, sometimes I work late, he responded, and I'm very capable of getting my own meal on those nights. Well, then you need to tell your boss that you're not going to work late. She shot back. Why? He said. Because I'm your mother and you need to obey me, she said. I have a feeling that mother hadn't revisited her parental job description since the time her boy was in middle school. Here's the point. When you're intrusive and give unsolicited guidance, your kids don't hear it and they view it as a sign of disrespect. I found that so much of the way we give our respect to kids is in the tone of our conversation. By tone, I mean our voice, demeanor, and even the atmosphere we bring to the conversation. We also need to be clear about the difference between having a conversation and giving a lecture. A conversation conveys respect. A lecture does not. As I remember a serious conversation I had with one of my daughters about lifestyle choices when she was in college. I was sad, frustrated, and she had to make some choices that were not moving her forward. Apparently, my tone wasn't very good because later she said, "You didn't say you were disappointed in me, but I knew you were totally disappointed in me." I didn't mean to convey total disappointment in her because it wasn't an all or nothing situation, but that's what my tone conveyed. Author and pastor Ron Greer writes, "Whenever we are intrusive, what they hear is not the lesson we're trying to share, but the message that we don't really respect, that they are grown." Tone is important, and some of us can be tone deaf. but when we offer advice with respect, we would give any other adult. We open the door to healthy adult relationship. Number 3, you are now a mentor and a coach. If you want your adult kid to listen to you, you need to transition from being a controlling parent to being a mentor and a coach. I feel like I did that. I tried to do that when they were teenagers, but they probably didn't see it that way. That's okay though. Okay, let's backtrack. If you want your adult kids to listen to you, you need to transition from being a controlling parent to being a mentor and a coach. If you do this in part by being your children's biggest supporter, you realize everyone needs affirmation and encouragement, including your adult children. Okay, I'm going to pause, and there is a structured table here. It says, how to tell the difference between a conversation and a lecture. You know you're giving a lecture when, bullet point 1, you do most of the talking. Bullet point 2, your voice is raised. Bullet point 3, you sound a little preachy. Bullet point 4, you sound like you're speaking to a child. Bullet point 5, your statements make you sound superior. You know you are having a conversation when, bullet point 1, you're listening to and reflecting on what the other person says. Bullet point 2, you engage in dialogue. Bullet point 3, your tone and demeanor show respect. Bullet point 4, your language is free from you should statements. And bullet point 5, you've been